feels like now we're in this third stage
Mhm.
where there's Chrome, Firefox, Edge, I guess it's
Mhm.
called, and Brave, and these all seem like really exciting, I don't know, innovative browsers. They're all kind of copying off of each other, picking up the good stuff.
There's
And
evolution again, especially on
evolution.
tracking protection. So privacy is this sort of global um, wave that's rising. I like to call it a wave because it's a large, somewhat chaotic structure. It's not a unitary good. You can't say, I'm buying privacy for, $3. I'm paying $3 for privacy. Some people think a VPN does this and are disappointed when it fails them, but often people use VPNs for region unlocking video or getting the
Right.
US Netflix
Just, yeah,
catalog.
exactly.
Um, but privacy is not a unitary good. It's complex and people are understanding it only over time and as they get burned. But there's a genie that's not going back in the bottle there. People are fed up. Apple has responded to this. Apple was always making Safari, I think, more of a privacy branded browser from the very beginning. I think this was probably Steve Jobs. Safari had private windows, private tabs before Firefox did. And these are only private in the sense that they don't leave local traces if you don't want them to. Turns out Safari does keep them around between shutdown, but the canonical model is no local traces after you close the private window. No leftover traces that you went to, some site that you were embarrassed by or bought a gift for somebody you wanted to keep secret.
But there's still some level of tracking.
There's network tracking. Network privacy is not guaranteed at all because you're using the same internet and ISP as a public window, a non-private window. But Safari had that early on. They also had a cookie blocking policy that might take a little explaining. If you know what a cookie is, it's a little bit of storage in the browser indexed by the name of the site. And it's really only the main name of the site, like bofa.com or something like npr.org. Every site can store some information in a cookie. Every time it's contacted by the browser, the previous version is sent back. And in the response from the server, the cookie's updated. So it's this little bit of storage in the browser that the site can keep updating, and it can store an encrypted version of your login credentials with a timestamp so you can stay logged in without having to retype your password every time you navigate, which is how it would be if you didn't have cookies. Mm-hmm. The web protocols, especially in the 90s, are so-called stateless protocols. So you go to your bank, you log in, you go from your login confirmed page to your account view. If you didn't have a cookie, you'd be logging in again.
Yep. Every time you type in the password.
So that was the great thing about cookies. Lou Montulli did it in a hurry in 1994 before I joined Netscape, and he did it for really holding that kind of credential. But even then, there was the image element embedded in the page, and the image gets fetched possibly from a different server, and that request carries the last cookie, which could be empty at first, and the response carries the updated cookie. So just by having images and cookies, you got tracking, because that image server can be serving a little 1x1 pixel, and they still use the word pixel in ad tech. Mm-hmm. And that pixel can be served from the same server, embedded differently with different URL spellings in the New York Times and ESPN. And as you go from one to the other, the image server can say, I haven't got a cookie for you. It's empty initially. I'm going to assign you user number 1234. I'm going to put a database entry in. And I see, by the way, I always fetch the name of the path part of the URL that I was in the New York Times. Mm-hmm. So you're a New York Times reader. Mm-hmm. And then you hit ESPN, same thing. And the database gets updated and the number user 1234 indexes in the database to a profile of you. You've been tracked. This was not intended, and it was too late to undo by the time I got to Netscape. I think Lou wanted to do Twinkies, he called them, and he was trying to solve several problems. He wanted them to be bigger because initially cookies had a short size limit. I think he wanted to solve the third-party problem, but Tom Paquin, the engineering manager, said, nope, no Twinkies, just cookies. We're done. You're done, son. And that's how a lot of that stuff was. That's how JavaScript, got frozen like a fly in amber in some ways with that sloppy equality operator that I made because of the early adopters. And the cookie got stuck with this tracking hazard. And then because JavaScripts can be like images, they're embedded in the page. By the time in Netscape 3, I made that work. You can get a request with the last cookie value and the response updates it. That's a tracking mechanism. And that's why you don't even need images to track now. You just use scripts. Yeah. So this whole tracking economy evolved. And it depended on these accidents of the 90s, these unintended consequences.
Well, it created some of the richest companies in the world, right? I mean, it's the social media.
All I got was t-shirts.
All I got is this crappy T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the fundamental problem the world is facing now. They're looking at what social media has created, and they're looking at and like a world is looking at itself in the mirror, and seeing that privacy is actually something as opposed to like a nice thing to have. It's something that is actually should be fundamental to the way we interact with the world as part of our tooling. And that's where the Brave browser comes in. And I suppose others as well are playing with this idea, but Brave is at the forefront of that. So maybe can you like describe what Brave is
Yes.
and what are its key principles and what's broken and what is it Brave trying to fix?
So when I realized that these accidents, like the third-party cookie, the image or script that's tracking you, or the this JavaScript that can do it invisibly now, that all this stuff wasn't intended, and that Firefox had supported extensions that block some of these things, I thought probably we should have browsers just block some of these things by default. These were not intended, and they're now unsafe. They're tracking you. There could be data breaches, malware distribution, bullying and psyops and other attacks on people. Block that stuff. Block that JavaScript. I'm Dr. Frankenstein. I've got to deal with a monster here. But obviously, you go to Gmail, there's a bunch of script there to make that amazing web client. That's okay. That's first-party JavaScript. So how do you tell the first from the third party? And it's not easy. It's not a matter of just what's embedded from a different server, because a lot of publishers use benign scripts from unrelated domains or apparently unrelated domains. So you end up having to develop a sort of human and machine learning practice around blocking. And at Brave, we did that from the start and built a research team to help drive it and automate it. We realized that protecting people needed machine learning. And around 2017 spring, I talked to my friends at Apple about this too. And they were also doing what they call intelligent tracking prevention, which uses local machine learning in the browser. And the funny thing is, great minds think alike. They were taking their third-party cookie blocker that was in Safari from the old days and making it not have a big loophole. Because what they did was in 2003, when Safari came out, they said, we're going to block cookies that are from those third-party embedded elements where you've never visited that site before. So I'm going to pick an ad company that got sold to AT&T, so I'm not picking on anybody unfairly, appnexus.com. Have you ever been to appnexus.com?
Nope.
I've never been there, but I guarantee you 10 years ago, you probably had, if you were using Firefox, you had a cookie, third-party cookie, because you were being tracked by them. And they were using that cookie to build up a profile of you. In Safari, as long as the user never went to AppNexus, that cookie would not be set. And that was a real move for privacy early on when Jobs was still around in Safari. But it had this loophole that if you do go to AppNexus, then why it's okay to be a third-party cookie. And so AppNexus did something very naughty. They took their ad partners that put the actual ad you click on, and they said, hey, add a little script so that when somebody clicks on the ad, before it goes to your landing page, redirect to AppNexus, and we'll redirect to the landing page. And by doing that, they set a first-party cookie and they got whitelisted. So it was a loophole they exploited. Intelligent tracking prevention in Safari was sophisticated enough to counteract this, and it did other things, and it's evolved since they did it. And we've evolved Brave too. And so when I say machine and human learning, there's a real set of techniques here. They have to fight.
This is a fascinating problem, actually.
Fingerprinting, right? Anytime you have a little bit of storage in the browser associated with a website, if the bad guy can get 32 websites, each one has a bit of storage, that's 32 bits. You can turn the bit on or off. You can make 4 billion numbers. You can make an identifier. It's called a super cookie sometimes. There are weaker ways that are statistical. They're called fingerprinting. You have to block all of them, and you have to not only automate, you want to work in the web standards body to put privacy in by default, by design, from the get-go, not add it as an afterthought, or go hog wild with new web APIs that add a bunch more local storage or fingerprint surface area. And that's been a struggle too, because guess who's the new Microsoft in the standards body? It's Google. And they're not in favor of privacy first. They want to do privacy their way, only under, I would say, market pressure. But with Apple and with Brave leading the way, we block third-party cookies almost without exception. So we just block them. And that gives us a very strong privacy benefit, but it also means some sites just don't work right. Embedded YouTube videos might not work right. So we're adapting in a similar way to Apple's done with ITP to make third-party cookies blocked, but to sort of simulate what looks like a working third-party cookie for the site. It essentially tries to partition each site and its third parties into its own sort of cookie jar.
Got it. And so, and like you said, is this both like a human fine tuning issue and a machine learning problem? So,
and as the humans learn, then they train the machine learning.
But maybe Google aside, or including Google, there's millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to be made from fighting the ways of Brave.
That's right. And it's been an interesting change from when we started in 2015. When we started, ad blocking extensions, AdBlock Plus was one of the big ones that started on Firefox in 2006, I believe, had gotten to a certain level of use around the world. And browsers like UC Browser in Asia had some amount of ad blocking built in and on by default. So PageFair was a startup, and they measured ad blocking adoption, and they tried to say, hey, publishers, you're 30% of the visitors to Pitchfork or Wired, to Condé Nast properties, are using ad blockers. If we can somehow convince them to lower their ad blocking for your site, that could be like a 43% lift, right? And 3/7. Well, that's easier said than done. And PageFair and others, SourcePoint, many others, tried to either smuggle ads through or cajole the user into letting ads appear. And it didn't really work. And meanwhile, the ad blocking adoptions just continued. Intelligent tracking prevention in Safari in 2017, Brave from 2016 on, with very strong cookie blocking and other protections. And this is not going away. The publishers used to rage against it. Like, we would try to say, we can help you. You're dealing with users who are already blocking all your ads. We can try to put back some economics that help the user and you, that led to the basic attention token that we started with Bitcoin. We can be your friend. Don't just fingerprint us as an ad blocker and treat us as an enemy. But in 2015 or 16, it was like, nah, you're an ad blocker. Get out of here. I hate you. And by 2017 or 18, it's like something's happening. The ad blocking is not stopping. And we're all getting sort of pulled onto Google's plantation through AMP, or, we're getting killed by the Google ad system we use because it's taking all the revenue, or, it's permitting, or some other vendors we use are permitting ad fraud. And so a fake New York Times is getting paid by the marketer running an ad that a bot clicks on, and the real New York Times that's supposed to get the ad doesn't get it.
And there's something really broken about that kind of system.
And that fraud is mediated through Google's ad exchange, which is the biggest of them all. And Google takes a fee. There's a flip side of that, which is malware distribution, malvertising, where fake advertisers put malware payloads in, or exploit kit loaders in JavaScript, and they smuggle them in ads onto real publisher pages. The ad exchange takes the fee. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to say this is a RICO predicate, but why is the ad exchange facilitating fraud and malware distribution and taking a fee? It's not right.